You're listening to the Sales Chameleon Podcast. Smarter sales, stronger growth, simplified.
Hey there, welcome back to the Sales Chameleon Podcast where selling smarter starts. I'm your host, Heather Coggins, and if you've ever felt like everything is just spinning out of control, your to-do list is overwhelming, your clients keep pushing back, and suddenly your sales pipeline feels like it's working against you rather than for you, you're not alone. All right. And so today we're going to be talking about perception, control, and decision-making in sales because, at the end of the day, we are all human. And when we feel like we're losing control, our brain starts filling in the blanks. And when it does that, it doesn't always fill in the blanks with the truth. Okay. We tend to assume the worst. We react impulsively and suddenly we're trapped in this whole stress spiral instead of, making these smart strategic moves. But what if there was a way to break out of that cycle, to really see clearly, even when things feel chaotic? And that's exactly what I'm going to be unpacking today. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so I want to start off by talking about why control and perception are linked. And what we tend to find out, if you kind of look at patterns, when control slips, perception distorts. And so the human brain craves control. And when we feel like we're losing it, whether that's in sales, business, or just everyday life, we start making assumptions, okay? And if we're honest with ourselves, those assumptions aren't always accurate. And so if you kind of picture sometime recently that you've had a great conversation with a prospect and they seemed interested, and then all of a sudden, radio silence. No reply, no next steps. Your brain automatically jumps in and starts saying things like, oh my God, they ghosted me because they don't respect my time. They probably went with a competitor who undercut my price. But is that all true, right? Or is that fact, or are those inferences? And, is that just our way of trying to make sense of the uncertainty? And more often than not, what we perceive as rejection or resistance, negligence, is really simply the other person just dealing with their own priorities. And so before you end up reacting, what you should really do is to step back and ask yourself, hey, am I seeing the full picture, or am I just seeing the version my brain is creating? And then recognizing that, hey, we don't always have all of the facts. When you're able to identify and recognize that, that's going to be that first step to really helping you regain control. Okay? Because when it comes down to it, you can't really solve a problem until you acknowledge it. And so let's talk a little bit about how this plays out in sales. So again, as humans, when we feel like we're losing control, what we do is naturally and subconsciously, for some folks, sometimes it can be consciously, but a lot of times it's very subconsciously. But what we do is we try to overcompensate. We over-explain, oversell, overpromise. But what happens when we do that is you're not able to course correct if you don't first acknowledge where you actually are, okay? Control's not going to come from doing more. It's going to come from focusing on the right things. And so if you've ever had a prospect that keeps asking for more info, more meetings, more time, and you, for whatever reason, find yourself keep saying yes because saying no felt like you were giving up control, the reality of that is constantly agreeing to every request actually doesn't put you in control. It buries you under an avalanche of expectations. And so, an example I can think of just personally when I was working as a corporate sales trainer is, we would get a lot of these requests from the field sales teams, the regional sales managers, the distribution managers, requesting all of this additional training. And, at first, our team kept saying, yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. We'll set up time. We'll lay out a plan, all of this stuff. But once we took a moment to stop and step back, we realized this is not something that we need to be handling. This is more of something that needs to be reinforced on their end, right? As the manager, this is information these reps have already learned. Going back through it again with us isn't going to do anything. They need it reinforced out in the field. And so what I'm kind of trying to get to with all of this is you really need to shift your thinking, okay? And so instead of sitting there and thinking to yourself, you know what, this is bullshit, they're just stringing me along, instead ask, hey, have I set clear expectations? Instead of getting upset and saying, I have no control over this, take a moment, shift your thinking and ask, okay, what do I actually have control over? And so when you start simplifying, you set boundaries, it's going to really allow you to move the needle forward to allowing you to regain that control. And so I want to talk through some actionable steps that can help you take back control when you find yourself kind of losing it. The first is going to be really simplifying what you focus on. So prioritize the key actions that are going to actually move that needle. Start saying no more, all right? Not every request deserves a yes, so make sure that you are protecting your time. Clarify your expectations early. A lot of the times, if not most of the time, misalignment happens when we end up assuming instead of asking. So make sure both parties, yourself and the party that you're working with, are very clear and understanding of what those expectations are, and that it's done early on, and that you're coming back to it and renegotiating those expectations anytime there's a change or a shift, okay? And then finally, the fourth one here is restore integrity. So if you've overpromised, just own it. Take accountability, okay? If things are unclear, reset the conversation. The person that you're working with is really going to appreciate you being honest and having that level of integrity versus trying to play it off as something it's not or full out lying about it. And so as an example, if you kind of, just think about your calendar, if you've ever looked at it and feel instant anxiety because you've got all these alerts, deadlines, meetings, everything just kind of starts blurring together into a chaotic mess. The same thing happens in sales, right? There's too many unchecked assumptions, too much overcommitting, and then suddenly you feel like you're drowning and you're trying to find your way, back to the top of the surface for some air. And when we look at, okay, so what's the solution to all of this? It's really taking that moment to step back, simplify, and start being more intentional about where your time and energy are going. And again, this applies not only to business, but day-to-day life as well. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with some key takeaways and an actionable item. And so as just kind of a quick recap, some things to remember: when we feel out of control, our brain fills in the blanks and it's often done incorrectly. Okay, so make sure that you're identifying when that's happened and you're shifting that when necessary. Secondly, regaining control is going to start with really acknowledging where we actually are, not where we assume we are. And then thirdly, setting boundaries, simplifying focus, and really realigning those expectations are going to help put you back in the driver's seat. And so as your action step or your actionable item, what I encourage you to do is in your next sales conversation, just pause and check your perception. Are you reacting based on assumptions, or are you seeing the full picture? And then challenge your knee-jerk reactions, adjust your approach, and then see how that changes the conversation. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode. Sales, like life, isn't about controlling every outcome. It's more about understanding reality, making those strategic choices, and staying adaptable. So if this episode resonated with you, please make sure to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, keep selling smarter, stay versatile, and I will catch you on the next one.